An open space outside CGO temporarily closed to allow perimeter fence construction work. Strong wind signal number 3 as a typhoon moves towards the South China coast. And a 5-hour truce to allow delivery of supplies and aid to Gaza.
Good evening. From now until the end of August, the open area outside the east wing of the central government offices will be closed to allow the construction of a new perimeter fence. The government says this will make the CGO more resistant to security threats. Stephanie Choi reports.
Hoarding now separates the open area outside the CGO and Tim May Avenue, as well as the space between the open area and the Legislative Council. A government spokesman announced this morning that the East Wing forecourt will be closed from today until the end of next month to allow the construction of a perimeter fence along Tim May Avenue and the boundary between the forecourt and Legco. Additional security personnel have also been positioned around the area. Authorities insist the increase in police presence isn't to prepare for any particular event.
It is rather an assessment on possibility of a situation that might happen.
The government explained that recent public events that took place at the Legco complex highlight the need to have the appropriate security measures to withstand potential security threats to the building. One lawmaker says the need for such measures is understandable.
This is just prepare in case if some people want to demonstration or become more violent, and at least they won't break the door or the glasses of the government building.
Others are not convinced.
They just want to suppress the freedom of expression because they are worried about the anger of the people, especially after the coming political reform consultation.
And it's only a weak government and government without confidence on themselves that they will try to push people away from them.
During the temporary closure of the East Wing forecourt, people may submit petitions to the government and participate in public gatherings on the pavement of Tim May Avenue. After the construction of the perimeter fence is completed, the open area will be closed to the public from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Members of the public may still hold meetings or marches during specific hours on Sundays and public holidays with the permission of the authorities. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
The strong wind signal number 3 is in effect as Typhoon Ramasan intensified into a severe typhoon and edges closer to the South China coast. At 7 p.m., Ramasan was about 540 kilometers south of Hong Kong. It is now forecast to move northwest at about 22 kilometers an hour in the general direction of western Guangdong and Hainan Island. The Hong Kong Observatory says based on Ramasan's present track, the chances of issuing higher signals tonight are not high. Still, there will be more bad weather in the next few days.
For the weather of tonight and tomorrow, as we can see, we are beginning affected by the rain bands of Venison. It will be cloudy with rain, and the rain will be heavy at times with thunderstorms. For the weather of the next couple of days, we expect the wind will moderate gradually, but there will still be showers.
Typhoon Ramasan was the strongest storm to hit the Philippines this year. In its wake was widespread destruction. At least 38 people were killed, millions are without power, and over 400,000 had to be evacuated to safety. Typhoon Ramasan ravaged the Philippines as a Category 3 typhoon when its ferocious winds peaked at 150 kilometers per hour. More than 500,000 people were affected as Ramasan barreled through central and northern Philippines, including the country's capital, Manila. Still scarred from the horror of last year's Typhoon Haiyan that killed more than 6,000 people, Robinson prompted many villagers to evacuate to safety. More than 500,000 people fled to emergency shelters, and it's a good thing they did. The typhoon pounded its way across the main island of Luzon, where it knocked down homes, trees, and power lines and triggered widespread blackouts. Of Luzon's 17 million residents, close to 2 million households were left in the dark when electricity was knocked out. Power interruptions were also reported across 11 provinces and 3 cities. Disaster officials are still assessing the damage, but the coconut-growing Quezon province appears to have suffered the brunt of the storm. It's so bad, the Quezon governor plans to declare a state of calamity. Most of the deaths in the storm were caused by falling objects. One woman died after being hit by an electricity pole, and a pregnant woman was killed when a wall in her home collapsed. Because reports of missing people are pouring in, officials expect the death toll to rise. Typhoon Robinson is expected to make landfall in South China within the next 24 hours as it moves in the general direction of western Guangdong province and Hainan Island.
Israel and Hamas are observing a 5-hour humanitarian pause brokered by the United Nations in order to deliver supplies and other aid to Gaza. Israel's bombardment of the region has killed more than 200 Palestinians, including 4 children yesterday who were playing on a beach. Alan Buknia reports.
The 4 were among a dozen children playing football on the beach when they were struck by shells fired from an Israeli naval ship. The Israeli military called the incident tragic, and shortly afterwards, Israel and Hamas said they would cease attacks for 5 hours today while the UN delivered aid to Gaza. Despite expressing outrage at the deaths of the 4 children, Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuri said they agreed to temporarily stop the shelling after consultations among various Gaza militant groups. It's the most encouraging sign yet that there could be some scaling back to the fierce fighting. Another encouraging sign was a meeting in Egypt between Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and leaders of the Arab League. They discussed the Egyptian proposed ceasefire that the Hamas military faction initially rejected. It's a concrete sign that efforts to reach a de-escalation in the violence are still active. International pressure for Hamas to accept the Egyptian proposal is also mounting. Speaking at a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Italy's foreign minister urged Hamas to revise their decision.
And we would use all the political and diplomatic efforts that we can put in place for a ceasefire, a sustainable ceasefire to take place.
I think that the most important thing vis-a-vis Gaza is to ensure that Gaza is demilitarized from rockets and from the attack tunnels that Hamas is building into Israel.
The Israeli army released footage today of what it says is the latest tunnel attack inside its border that was repelled yesterday. The Hamas political wing insists it's still considering the Egyptian brokered ceasefire proposal, but the militant wing said Wednesday it rejected the deal because it failed to respond to Palestinian conditions. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
Militants launched a pre-dawn attack today on Kabul International Airport and Afghanistan's capital. Rockets rained down on the airport building used by civilians and the military. The militants occupied 2 buildings under construction about 700 meters from the airport, which they used as a base for the attack. Security forces surrounded the buildings, and there was an intense gun battle. Police said 4 of the attackers were killed, and the battle was halted without any civilian or police casualties. Fighting lasted about 4 hours. The Taliban claimed responsibility. The attack came at a tense time in Afghanistan as there is a recount underway of the disputed second round of the presidential election.
The United States has imposed its toughest sanctions yet on Russia over the crisis in Ukraine. They target businesses closely linked to Russian President Vladimir Putin, including oil giant Rosneft and the country's second largest gas producer, Novatek.
These sanctions are significant, but they are also targeted, designed to have the maximum impact on Russia while limiting any spillover effects on American companies or those of our allies. What we are expecting is that the Russian leadership will see once again that its actions in Ukraine have consequences, including a weakening Russian economy and increasing diplomatic isolation.
Putin promptly hit back. Speaking during his visit to Brazil, the Russian leader said U.S. sanctions will take relations with Moscow to a dead end and damage American business interests in his country.
Next, tragedy in South Korea. A helicopter that took part in the search for victims in the Sewol ferry disaster has crashed, killing all 5 firefighters on board. The chopper went down near an airport complex and a school in the southern city of Gwangju today. It was returning to headquarters after participating in the search operations for 11 people still missing in the ferry disaster back in April. One person on the ground was slightly hurt. Authorities are investigating the cause of the crash. China has proposed the construction of a major railway across South America. It will run all the way from the Peruvian Pacific coast to the Brazilian Atlantic coast. Jameson Wong has the story.
It's seen as an attempt to further raise China's profile in Latin America. President Xi Jinping has been meeting with regional leaders during a state visit to Brazil after attending the BRICS summit there. Among them, Peruvian President Ollanta Humala. The two leaders pledged to further promote bilateral cooperation. Xi also proposed that China, Peru, and Brazil set up a working group on the design, construction, and operation of a planned transcontinental railway project. It will run from Peru's Pacific coast to Brazil's Atlantic coast. Xi said China stands ready to maintain communication with the two countries on the project. Humala agrees, saying it would benefit the people of all three nations. The president also told Brazilian lawmakers that it's imperative that the two nations boost cooperation. She said in a complex and profoundly changing world, there's great potential for stronger ties between two of the world's major developing countries. Brazilian parliamentary leaders stressed it's a priority for their country to develop a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. They also hailed the outcome of the BRICS summit, especially the setting up of a Shanghai-based development bank and a contingent reserve arrangement that will help countries forestall short-term liquidity pressures and strengthen the global financial safety net. This year marks the 40th anniversary of diplomatic ties between China and Brazil. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
And still ahead in our newscast. The local jobless rate up slightly. A new study on the health risks posed by hepatitis C. And scientists in the U.S. create a biological pacemaker.
England. Present day. Where is everyone? The British are coming. Saturday. Same year telecast as the UK. Britain's Got Talent. Season 8 at 8 on Pearl.
愛錫屋企人，梗係要有個舒服嘅家啦。JEE 金瑞典就幫到你啦！
佢最新嘅專利產品有燈天花抽氣扇，首創節能照明2合1，又靜風力又強勁，安裝好簡單，保持室內空氣流通話咁易。另一強效產品 UV 管抽蚊機，報蚊能力特強，大大減少俾蚊傳播病菌嘅機會，
保障屋企人嘅健康。JEE 金瑞典俾你喺屋企嘆世界。
Aha! Robin Hood here. I love giving away money. Wouldn't it be great to do it every day? With DirectAsia.com. You'll always get the best price guaranteed on car insurance every day of the week. How's that for giving back to the people?